Good evening, friends. How are you? Gerry Wagoner here from Ohio, over in the United States, here to talk about some things that I think are of mutual importance to all of us. I'd like to start out by using two words: theology matters. I repeat, theology matters. In other words, theology is important. It has a place in our lives. It fulfills a need that you and I are born with. And as we take a good look at culture and we apply the teachings of the Bible to the culture, we realize that culture is heading the wrong direction. Culture is heading off a cliff in Western culture and many other parts of the world as well. We don't want to follow them. I don't. And I know you don't either. One of the big tidal waves in our culture currently is the transgender movement. You've probably heard of that in whatever country you're in. Here in America, it's a big deal. In the United Kingdom, it's a big deal. I noticed just this morning that the ex-Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, made a statement that startled me. Nothing should startle me anymore these days, but it did. Here's the statement: becoming transgender is to enter a sacred journey of becoming whole or becoming complete. Now, Williams, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury between 2003 and 2012, recently signed a letter to the British Prime Minister. The letter was written by LGBTQ activist Stephen Chowkey. In this letter, they argued that conversion therapy must be banned and it must be widened to include lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. What is conversion therapy? Conversion therapy is a boogeyman that people have created to try to justify homosexuality. Now, if I were to sit down and pray with someone who came and said, I'm struggling with impure thoughts regarding someone of the same sex or someone of the opposite sex, both sin, by the way, and I put my arm around them and I say, well, let's pray about this. Let's take it to God and see what he has to say. Let's open up the pages of the Bible. Under current definition, that's conversion therapy, and that's bad, according to current definition. Now, back to Rowan Williams' letter. He said, becoming transgender is to enter a sacred journey of becoming whole or complete. Okay. Western culture you and I live in has built an idol to sexual deviancy, friends. And Western culture is demanding that you and I worship that idol or face increasing cultural, financial, or legal marginalization. Now, there's something else going on too in Western culture that plays into this. One word: victimhood. Victimhood. What is that? Well, victimhood is very popular in North America, unfortunately. In fact, I would go so far to say that it is the new upper class. It is what people want to be if they don't have a biblical worldview. Victimhood. People want to be a victim of all things. Why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you aspire to be something creative, something positive, something noble? But victimhood is now desirable in Western culture. You see, these people live with the belief that when they achieve full victim status, they've arrived. They've arrived. Why is that? Well, number one, we in the Western culture, particularly in the United States, are incentivizing victimhood. In other words, we make it desirable. For instance, the birth rates in marriage and in general in North America are way down. And it's that way throughout Europe as well. You know this. One of the reasons for that is that we don't incentivize having children anymore. And a country or a culture will get more of what it incentivizes. That's why we have 10 million victims for every person who is a success. We incentivize victimhood in this country, maybe yours too. And so people act like we're some sort of oppressive society because there's nothing more valuable than doing that. That's why they're adopting victimhood. It builds your brand, it builds your social media, and sometimes your bank account. All you have to do is find a way to be a victim and say you've been oppressed. There's nothing more valuable than that in this broken, confused culture. And that's why whatever a country encourages, it gets more of. And that's why our country is encouraging not marriage, not having children, but victimhood, sadly. I have a question for you. Why would a professional football player in America making millions of dollars a year want to be a victim? Why? Why would a talk show host worth $820 million, and I'm referring to Oprah Winfrey here, why would she want to be a victim? Why would the Duchess of Sussex and her manipulated husband want to be seen as victims? Good question, isn't it? Because it has been incentivized. It offers a status that makes you immune from guilt and blame. Aha! And that's desirable to people. After all, if you are a victim, how can you be blamed for anything? Nowadays, people gather themselves together in entire groups of victims and they celebrate their victimhood. Some people even lie about being a victim, such as Elizabeth Warren, a senator here in the United States, when she claimed to be an Indian and she wasn't. And so it's become the ultimate quest for a number of people in our culture. Now, put your finger there and let's talk about Disney. Have you heard of Disney? I assume you probably have. It's a large entertainment conglomerate here in North America. It was started by Walt Disney back in around 1923. And he made a statement back in those days: our greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. Okay. Noble aspiration. But what's happened in the meantime? You see, Walt's unique strategy of building an entertainment empire for children once made Disney a very trusted source of family entertainment. Most of you probably remember Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse or something like that. And that was what Disney was all about for a number of decades, but that didn't last long. Walt Disney died in 1964. I was 4 years old at the time. And as soon as that happened, Disney began to release R rated movies, which means movies that have some bad things in them. And they began to release adult television programming under the Touchstone label. Well, 10 years later, now we're into the 70s, approaching the 80s. Disney bought out Harvey Weinstein's Miramax. Now we move into the 90s. During the 90s, while Disney's more family friendly brand was releasing animated cartoons, Miramax featured Pulp Fiction, Train Spotting, and the Scream sequels. You may not know what that means, and if you don't, thank God for that. But during this time, Weinstein was accused of sexual harassment and assaults. Now, some of this was taking place even as Disney's family friendly brand released A Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1996 with its depiction of a Catholic villain praying before a cross while ranting and raving about his lustful thoughts. That's 1996. This is what Disney had become, friends. It wasn't for children anymore. It was a movie business. It was dominated by Marvel blockbusters. Here's an interesting tidbit for you. Half of Disney Plus subscribers today, and by today I mean April of 2022, half of their subscribers are adults with no children. What about theme parks? I've been to a few of them. I've been to Epcot. We took our children to Epcot in the mid late 1990s. It was interesting. But today, 60% of Disneyland visitors are adults with no children. Can you believe that? 6 out of 10. Only 36% of Disney World visitors had children under 18, by the way. The largest demographic for the theme parks, which is Disneyland and Disney World and other places, like the movies, are millennials. You know what millennials are? These are people born between the year 1980 and 2000. These are members of the fandoms. That's an interesting word. I take the time to explain it. You can look it up. But it's a group of people who are very interested in something. They're called fans. And these people are the likeliest to spend money on licensed merchandise, on toys, movies. All these things are Disney's bread and butter, along with uh, $10 drinks or more. And so Disney is rapidly adapting its theme parks and resorts that emphasize its Marvel and Star Wars properties more than what it used to. In fact, this will blow you away. Its Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel, complete with interactive Star Wars adventure, cost $4,809 for two adults for 2 days and 2 nights. Wow. Now, why would they bother with t-shirts and kid stuff when you can sell $13 adult beverages and rooms and an experience for $2,400 a night? Wow. So even though Disney may have started out feeding the imaginations of children, its business model now is acquiring intellectual properties with active fandoms. These are groups of people who follow it, and then milking these people for every cent they can get out of them. Interestingly, in Florida, here in the United States, we have a governor who is very family friendly. And he's very conservative by nature. And so he is coming into inevitable conflict with Disney, who is also based there in Florida, south of Orlando. Recently, Disney demonstrated huge political opposition to a Florida law that was barring teachers from pushing sexual issues on kindergartners. That sounds like something I could support, banning things like that. And this would be in line with the old family values of Disney, but the company's actual base, like that of virtually every other entertainment corporation in the United States, is just a narrow slice of upscale urban millennials with lots of money and a lot of times no family. We call these people woke. Maybe you've heard of the word woke. Wokes are now Disney's base. Going back a few years in 1966, the idea that a single adult would spend more money on Disney merchandise than a family of 4 children would have seemed ridiculous in those days. But in 2022, it's the new normal. If you doubt that, stop by a theme park and see how many adults with no children are wearing almost every single piece of Disney merchandise. And these people would love to lecture you about LGBTQ theory or critical race theory. You see, this is part of the new religion of woke millennials. These are the people that Disney caters to now. This is 2022. Not little girls who dream of being princesses. In fact, their theme parks at Disney no longer address little girls as princesses. And that's also why rides like the Pirates of the Caribbean or Jungle Cruise are being revamped to be more politically correct. You see, Disney's woke demographic is much pickier than even the pickiest child could be. And it's also sexually creepy. Creepy. Let's go on. Disney's new demographic are adults, as I mentioned earlier, who have never properly grown up and, on some level, are still thinking of themselves as children. They're immature, you might say. That's also the profile of an average child molester. I've been counseling for a number of years, and I know this to be true, friend. It's also the profile for the kind of adult who would insist that schools force children to explore their sexual identities between the kindergarten and third grade age. This is absolutely evil. This is absolutely opposed to truth, reality, and biblical values. You see, healthy adults raise, protect, and care for children. It's that way in your life and mine. Christian adults raise their children with a biblical worldview. In other words, that's how they see the world as a family. And they correctly address all the existential questions in life, of which there are about 4 existential questions in life, friends. You and I are going to have to address these questions at some point in life. Everyone does. What are those questions? Existential questions. Number 1, origin. How did I get here? That question cries out to be answered in your heart and mind. Number 2, what is the meaning of life? What is purpose? Why am I here? Number 3, what is right and wrong, or morality? How do I know what's right and what's wrong? And lastly, destiny. What happens when you die? Well, deep, unhealthy worldviews erase the barriers between themselves and children in ways that can be merely immature or outright evil. In other words, they come up with the wrong answers to life's existential questions. And so Disney World, Disneyland is a messed up company with a messed up fan base. Let me repeat that. Disney is a messed up company with a messed up fan base. This is no secret to theme park employees who will anonymously talk about it on internet forums. But some of those employees have also been caught up in child sex investigations, like what happened in the last couple of months in Florida. Hundreds of Disney employees were arrested for child trafficking and sexual abuse of minors. Okay. Ideologies and worldviews have consequences, don't they? Now, Disney has a lot of influence. In the US, we call that clout. And Disney has enough clout to make a lot of that go away through its advertising budgets and incredible power at its theme parks. And they also wield a lot of influence and control over local governments in California and Florida. Although, as I mentioned earlier, in Florida, Governor DeSantis has warned that that influence is going away, and it is. And I'm grateful for that. The growth of Disney paralleled a post-war, and by post-war I mean post-1945, child-oriented family culture. See, after the war, people began to look around and say, what really matters in life? It's my family, my marriage, my children. But the collapse of that culture into a counterculture has sent the company astray. After the founder, Walt Disney himself, died, the company found success in moving beyond selling universal family entertainment to tapping into obsessive subcultures, and that eventually brought them to the homosexual or LGBTQ culture. As a company, at one time, they nurtured fandom in children. It was uniquely positioned to capitalize on the transformation of adults into overgrown children. It helped keep people mature. Now, none of this is good for adults, for children, or for the culture, and neither is Disney. Neither is Disney. It is not good for families, children, adults, or the culture. I mentioned American birth rates before, and they're lagging. In other words, they're dropping, and the family is in a poor state, you see, and only 3 in 10 millennials are living with a child and a husband or wife. That's 30%. Much of this demographic growth is coming from children from childbirth, but not from Americans, which is one of the reasons why our current president in North America is flooding the country with illegal immigrants. He expects that they will vote for him, and also they will replenish a declining demographic. So, looking at it from this vantage point, Disney's bet on diversity in children's entertainment and on catering to adult fans willing to drop almost $5,000 on a hotel with lightsaber training and sing along sessions to cartoon show tunes from their childhood kind of makes business sense. The Walt Disney business model depended on a healthy national family years ago. But nowadays, shareholders are not going to bet on a growth segment in the American nuclear family. Why? Because it doesn't exist the way it used to. Betting on dysfunctional adults with a lot of money makes a lot more sense to them. Okay. Well, here in America, and probably in your country too, whether it be Denmark or Scandinavia or Europe, Americans are more atomized than ever. What do I mean by that? Families are drifting apart. They're drifting apart. Religious faith is imploding among millennials and Zoomers. Zoomers, by the way, is a term for Generation Z here in America. It means anyone born after 1996. Religious faith is declining among millennials and Zoomers. What is the problem? Well, fictional characters and entertainers of popular culture are taking the place of family and faith. Fandom provides a sense of belonging and culture that community no longer does, or family no longer does. You see, Main Street is being replaced by the Avengers and by Star Wars and by fantasy. And who can blame a generation born into a broken nation for choosing fantasy over reality? Hmm. Peter Pan, just like the Narnia books, concludes with the reality that children have to leave fantasy behind and grow up and become adults. Well, that's a healthy way to approach life. But what happens if children never grow up? You have a lot of males, but you don't have men. There's a difference. A man takes care of his family, a man provides for his family. A male necessarily doesn't. Girls, if you're looking for a husband, look for a man. Don't look for a male. Look for a man. Someone who has convictions, someone who stands up for what he believes in. More importantly, someone who believes that the world was created by God and that he's here for a purpose. Back to Disney. Disney still has a profitable children's segment, but its real profits, as I mentioned, are coming from overgrown children born into broken families, prematurely coming of sexual age, losing their innocence, who are eager to embrace leftist, utopian causes and fantasies. Note that. Who are seeking an identity and an escape at the same time. That's pretty potent. And so this company, Disney, is not really for children anymore. It's for broken adults. And it's only natural that Disney would seek to create more broken adults to perpetuate its business model. You see, a healthy, functional adult isn't nearly as profitable for the entertainment giant as a dysfunctional one or as an immature child who's addicted to entertainment. Those are more profitable. And so advocating that schools push sexual identity on kindergartners is a cause that the entire entertainment industry can get behind, an industry that wouldn't exist without dysfunctional adults. It starts by creating dysfunctional children, especially in the area of morality and sexuality. To put it simply, friends, what's bad for America is great for Hollywood or Disney. Let me repeat that. What's bad for America is good for Hollywood or Disney. Functional people, and by functional I mean people who have a biblical worldview, who have a healthy self-image, they don't spend all their time in front of a television set. productive people. And functional families don't plant their children in front of a television set or buy them anything they want just to get them to be quiet. No, functional people are not very profitable for Disney or for Hollywood, which is probably Sodom counterpart. The entertainment industry went from leisure enterprise to one that thrives on dysfunction. And so ratings and demographic profiles of the industry reflect, as I've been trying to explain here, a profound shift away from entertainment as a pastime to entertainment as a lifestyle. Notice the difference. This is also affecting people's identity. Now, let's talk about Disney and transgenderism. Anyone who's been paying attention in recent years and recent months knows that the studio there at Disney has made no secret about incorporating gay and transgender messaging into its content aimed at children and adults. In fact, excuse me, the Disney CEO, Chief Executive Officer Bob Chapek, recently vowed to continue fighting Florida's parental rights and education law, as well as similar legislation in other states. What was that law? The Florida law prohibits the teaching of sexuality and gender ideology to kids in kindergarten through third grade. Good. I support that law. But Disney doesn't. Recent leaked internal videos show Disney creators openly discussing their plans for more gay and transgender characters. You can find that on YouTube and other places on the internet. They didn't care. They were saying some pretty nasty things. Do you think they'd want to be quiet about it? They felt that they were big enough that it didn't matter. And so they were being honest for a change. And this is not exactly a new development. You see, there are numerous times Disney has promoted the gay and transgender agenda in movies, TV shows, and other programming aimed primarily at children. Let me give you some examples. Last year, 2021, Disney Plus hosted This Is Me, Pride Celebration Spectacular, a musical special on YouTube starring a drag queen, Nina West, with performances of popular Disney songs reimagined with LGBT, finish it, themes. Among the performers were a gender fluid singer by the name of Alex Newell and gender non binary performer Jesse James Keitel. Wow. Okay. Let's go back 2 years, 2020, Pixar. They had a movie called Out. This animated short story tells the story of a young man named Greg who doesn't want his parents to discover his relationship with his boyfriend Manuel. This movie culminates with a homosexual gay kiss. Interestingly, Pixar was also looking for minors to cast as a 14-year-old transgender girl recently. We know this from a casting notice that was sent out by Disney last year. They were looking for a 14-year-old transgender girl for an upcoming animated project. This is what they're all about nowadays. They were looking for minors aged anywhere from 12 to 17 years of age who can authentically portray a transgender character. Disney Plus's Ironheart series casting a transgender woman of color. Now, this goes one step farther. This is for their upcoming Marvel superhero series. And they announced they were looking to cast a Black, Latino, or African Latino transgender woman who's around 18 to 22 years of age. For the woke left, you see combining transgenderism with critical race theory is a home run. They like that. Well, Disney Plus's Loki series embraces gender fluidity. You see, this new Marvel series on Disney Plus revealed that Loki, or Tom Hiddleston, was gender fluid in a trailer that dropped last year. Moving on. The Disney Channel's Owl House, a couple of years ago, introduced a non binary individual who uses they or them pronouns. That happened last year, 2021. The children's animated series unveiled the character Rain Whispers, the gender non binary head witch, you heard me right, head witch of the Coven. Well, this person was voiced by non binary actor Avi Roca, who revealed that both the actor and the character use they, them pronouns. In other words, they don't want to be known as a man or a woman anymore. Compare this, friends, with the language of the demoniac in the Bible who accused Jesus of tormenting them. Moving on. Recently, Disney theme parks, went genderless by removing ladies and gentlemen or boys and girls from all their greetings. This is just more LGBTQ nonsense. That took effect last year, by the way, 2021. Another illustration in 2020, 2 years ago, the animated movie Onward from Pixar features a lesbian character. Excuse me. This is a Cyclops police officer named Officer Spectre, voiced by openly gay actress Lena Vate. It just kind of happened, she said. The film's producer told Yahoo Entertainment, the scene when we wrote it, it just kind of came together. Oh, really? Maybe the prince of this world was inspiring you. Then she sums up by saying, that's what we wanted. No, it's what your commander wanted, the one who was cast out of heaven in the book of Revelation, chapter 12. Another movie, Andy Mack, featured a homosexual kissing. And this coming of age drama series featured the network's first gay teenage couple in the series finale that aired in 2019. So that's 3 years ago. And then there's Big Shots, which featured a lesbian teenage kiss. This is a family show, according to Disney. So they say. And then there's Beauty and the Beast, 2017, going back 5 years. This live action remake features actor Josh Gad in the role of Lei Fao. In an interview, the director Bill Condon revealed that Lei Fao is gay. Well, of course he is. Disney has a goal to promote this kind of thing. They also had a movie on Disney Channel by the name of Good Luck Charlie, and also a junior movie called Doc McStuffins, and they both featured lesbian mothers. These two animated series for children, mind you, both have featured lesbian couples. In fact, Good Luck Charlie aired in an episode in 2014 in which one of 4 children has a play date with a kid who has 2 mothers. Okay, moving on. Disney's corporate president was interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and it is a she, said that the next generation is more queer and we must get with it. In other words, our current culture is more homosexual than it used to be, and that's true. And she says, therefore, we must get with it. In other words, we must go along with it. But not just go along with it. Disney has a goal to promote it, and they're doing that. Her name is Karen Burke. In fact, she told company staff that Generation Z is 30 to 40% queerer or more gay than previous generations, and they have to accommodate them. Wait a minute. Disney has helped create, they're not the only ones, but they have helped create sexual deviancy in children. And now they're claiming that they have to add more sexual deviancy just to meet the demands they've helped create. Isn't that called circular reasoning? You bet it is. Kathy Burke, by the way, the CEO of Disney, is the mother of 2 queer children, her own words. And she admits that Disney is targeting young people with LGBTQ content. She said in another video that she would like to see at least 50% of Disney's characters in the future identify as LGBTQ or as a racial minority. Notice the blending of critical race theory and LGBTQ. This is what wokeness is all about. This is where the world is heading. This is the religion of our sick, confused culture, friends. And there are people in that culture that we care about. We want to help them come out of this and to find truth and peace and joy in their life. So Karen Burke, who has 2 children who identify as queer, is apparently doing so well with her own children that she wants to be able to reach yours. What? Wow. Well, Disney announced last week that they will work to repeal Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' new parental rights education law, the one I mentioned earlier. Why? Because they say Disney is dedicated to standing up for the rights and the safety of the LGBTQ plus community. What? Safety? You know what the suicide level is among transgender children? It's almost 300% higher than the average child. There is no safety, and you cannot blame that suicide rate on the rest of the normal culture not accepting them. No, they're receiving for themselves the error of their recompense, which was meat. The Bible clearly says in Romans chapter 1, safety? Not at all. You see, they're targeting children, but yet they virtue signal about safety in order to make themselves sound good, to sound noble. Well, back to Florida. Ron DeSantis signed this bill into law a week and a half ago. That restricts schools from teaching children between the age of kindergarten, which would be 5 and 10, about transgenderism, about sexual identity and gender fluidity and all these homosexual deviations. It prevents them from doing that. It makes it illegal. Now, the critics of that law say, well, no, this legislation is harmful. It's harmful to inclusiveness. Okay, well, they want to include poison into your food and call it nutrition. They mockingly call this bill the Don't Say Gay bill. They don't like the fact that, according to this new bill, you can't teach 5-year-old kids about erotic sodomy. And I used that word on purpose to shock you, because that's what it is. What is the goal of all this? Well, the goal of this tidal wave of immorality is to wipe out the distinction between male and female, to wipe out the distinction between God and human, to eliminate the distinction between creator and creation, Romans 1:25 through 27. God's not behind this at all, friends. This is not the divine design of harmony that our God has envisioned or outlined in the Bible. You see, true equality for women allows them to be perfectly happy in their half of the circle. Absolutely. True equality for men allows them to find fulfillment in providing for their family and leading the family in a God glorifying direction. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for them. Wives, see that you respect your husbands. And finally, all of you, be of one mind. People living in this type of harmony and this intimacy, friends, can rejoice in who they are without trying to become their male or female counterpart. They're satisfied. They find fulfillment in who they are. And that's the way God has laid it out, friends. Let's talk about marriage for just a moment. You see, marriage has been the bedrock of Western civilization for 2,000 years, probably more. Of civilization longer, but Western civilization about 2 millennia. Prior to that, and I'm going back before the era of Christ and the apostles, prior to that, the Greco-Roman pagan world allowed all kinds of sexual expressions and views of the divine. We can find that by studying history. In its understanding of both God and man, the West is now returning to those pagan morals. And they're doing it in the name of freedom, love, civil rights, diversity, and equality. So they say. They offer freedom, so they say, when in reality, They're giving you only bondage. Now, such values free us from the definitions of human nature, and I should say false values. Such false values free us from the definitions of human nature that were established by the Creator himself. In this regard, Darwin and Marx and critical theory, Antonio Gramsci have won. As far as the culture goes, they have won. Okay, they own the culture now, friends. But they don't own you and I, and they don't own God's peculiar, special people. Our culture no longer believes that God created the cosmos or that he set biblical marriage in place as a fundamental human and societal building block. They don't believe that anymore. But they do know that when they see a marriage of a husband and wife walking in harmony with one another and in accordance with God's will, it's attractive to them. How do we know? I've had some of them say that, and many of you have as well. They can't understand or explain it, but it's attractive to them. Many people still want to be spiritual friends in this godless universe. And they want to have a moral universe. They want to know what right and wrong is, and they want to have a sense of meaning for their lives. But shorn of any notion of a personal meaning defining creator, they're lost. They have no worldview to base stability on, and so they're vulnerable to this kaleidoscope of immorality and gender confusion coming down the pike is sweeping these people up because they don't have the foundation of biblical stability to stand on. And I care about that, and I know you do too. And so homosexuality in our culture demands gay marriage as its legitimizing ritual without any basis at all in the creation account. Does the Bible anticipate this? Oh, yeah. Turn with me to Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20. It says there that they will call good evil and evil good, and they will substitute darkness for light and confuse the two. But you still believe, friends. I know you're out there. We hear from you from time to time, and I'm thankful to God that you're there. It is people like you that keep this entire world from rotting away at the seams tonight, friend. You're needed, and you're part of God's family. You say, well, I used to be. I'm not sure I am anymore. Look up towards heaven, wherever you are. Say, I was wrong. If you've drifted away from God, say, I need you. If you're not sure what to believe anymore, say, God, I want to trust you. Say, I love you. And then say, I trust you. God will take you there. You see, true love cannot exist in an environment of distrust, friends. And as our world begins to distrust God, the reality of his word, and the truths of creation, they grope helplessly for something to stand on, and there's nothing but sand. But you and I have the Bible available. We have a rock to stand on. You still believe, and that makes you distinct, friends, which goes back to the very foundational creation story where God made distinctions between male and female, between creator and creation, distinctions between good and evil symbolized in the two trees, distinctions between divinity and humanity. Today, they're trying to blend all these together. It's called neo-paganism, and one of these days, I will devote an entire presentation to current neo-paganism coming into the church. But that's not you, and that's not me. You and I believe in God's distinctions, and we've made a commitment to uphold them, to live by them, to be sheltered, nurtured by them, and safeguarded by them, friends. That makes you, and that makes me distinct. And it also makes you and I, if we're willing, a son or a daughter of God. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.